Yes, indeedy, it is. Welcome back to Trekzone Live. It's been a little over 9 months since our last scheduled stream, and that was before Vegas. Boy, what's happening in Vegas. But now you get to experience the full uncut majesty of Talkin Science every Saturday at 8 a.m. right now. On this first Talkin Science live stream, Russia's anti-satellite capability, a dancing star proves Einstein right again, and happy birthday Hubble. It's Saturday, April 25, 2020, lest we forget. Let's talk some science, uncut and produced live.
Across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube, this is Talking Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
Another Tuesday, it's another Talkin Science, and it's another lockdown day as well. Brad, happy Tuesday.
Yeah, how's it going?
Really good, really good. The whole home setup, it's not too bad for Trekzone because it's where we are normally, but everyone around the world is coping with this new normal.
Yeah, new normal, I think is a good word. I mean, look, while it's been an adjustment for some people, I kind of hope that, maybe once this all resolves, some things will be learned and they'll be able to improve some of the ways we do normal operations as opposed to just kind of reverting immediately back to what we used to do.
It is incredible to think that a lot of the stuff that we go into the office for and we sit in peak hour traffic for really doesn't need to happen. We can do most of the stuff from home.
That's right. So you gotta have to hope that maybe that there is a better way of doing business. For accessibility issues for people. Well, it actually isn't that hard to do those sorts of things. And so hopefully that we see some positive evolution. Let's call it.
Absolutely.
Talking Science headlines.
Well, let's dive into those headlines of the week. A couple of good ones. Virgin Orbit, I'd completely forgotten that they were there and joining this private company race, but they've had a successful test flight.
That's right, yeah. We've talked about Virgin Galactic, we talked about everyone else. Virgin Orbit, again, is kind of doing their own unique thing where they're launching rockets off of 747s. Now, this is not a unique idea, but again, they're trying to commercialize it and do it efficiently. And so they did their final test. It went according to plan, and they're essentially ready to start operations. So, good on Virgin Orbit for getting there.
And we've been alluding to this for the last few weeks. Will they, won't they? Finally, NASA have said that yes, they will be. On the 27th of May, US time, SpaceX's Crew Dragon will be launching the first Americans into orbit from American soil since 2011.
That's right. They finally set that date of it's May 28th at 6:40 a.m. Australia time for that launch. So, we'll see how it goes, but they're pushing ahead. And if they set a launch date, within about 5 weeks, that means they're starting the preparation. So that's not going to slow them down.
And a new comet may soon be lighting up our night skies or possibly our daytime skies if it gets any closer.
Comet Atlas was in the news a couple of weeks ago, but the problem with comets is they're like cats. You never know what they're going to do, and they don't like you. and so Comet Atlas broke up, but another comet, Comet Swan, is brightening. It's already visible with small telescopes, and it could be visible to the naked eye in a few weeks, or it could turn into Atlas and melt and break apart. So, we'll see what happens, but it could be a cool show in the skies in a few weeks.
I was watching the track on this one just very quickly, and I think that the best vantage point is going to be sitting on Mars with a pair of binoculars.
Yeah, look, if you're on Mars, you would be in a very good spot. Luckily, the southern hemisphere isn't too bad for this one.
Bit of doom and gloom, or potential doom and gloom. Russia has launched an anti-satellite missile. Not the first time that they've done this, not the first time they've had this capability, but they're really ramping up the testing on this anti-satellite capability in a growing arms race in space.
That's right. Now, we'll just be clear here. They didn't actually end up physically launching and destroying a target. It was a simulated mission with a real launch to a kind of simulated target. And as I said, this isn't new, but it was a new version of a test, a new missile, and follows after some stories that we've covered about Space Force's first launch into space, also Space Force saying about Russian interference with satellites. And one of the things that people were inherently worried about in this growing militarization of space and exactly things like this, moving more and more into conflict in space. So it's definitely an area to watch out for.
An interesting one too, because I think last year we covered India developing this technology.
Yes, they did it kind of out of the blue. It was about a year ago now, in fact, and they were quite censored for what they did. So in that case, India launched a missile, destroyed one of their own satellites to show it. And the problem here, why everyone's worried, is not just the militarization aspect. It is really, you blow up a satellite, this produces thousands of pieces of debris, space junk, which is uncontrolled, which can crash into other things and adds this growing problem of space junk. Now, when India did this, they said, oh, well, we're testing a satellite near that was going to do re-entry, so it was only going to be up there for a few weeks. While that was mostly true, explosions in space never go exactly according to plan, no matter how much you would like it. And so some of that debris does not stay near the Earth, and it spreads out. And there is some debris that will be up there for weeks to months to years. You know, when China did a test in 2007, there is still a stream of debris from China's anti-satellite missile test. 13 years later, orbiting the Earth.
And as we've sort of alluded to, it's this building up of conflict in space, really. Russia's made some interesting moves with satellites in the last few weeks as well. Just in general, things are getting a little bit hot in orbit.
It's a slippery slope. And one of the great things that space has always had is that there has been this cooperation. You know, the Apollo-Soyuz tests in the middle or the height of the 70s during not only the space race, but the Cold War, cooperation in the 80s, the building an International Space Station in the 80s and the 90s. So many of these things that Russia and America in particular, you know, nominal adversaries, have worked together in space. And in fact, were the groups that led the signings of the treaties in the 60s to prevent a militarization of space are now the ones kind of defying their own leadership in some ways. And it is a slippery slope.
Do you think it's a little bit like the Cold War? Obviously, the Cold War was quite a significant event, and not trying to make light of it here, but in terms of another sort of Cold War, like it's just this escalation, but not really going to be leading to anything. Hopefully, calmer heads prevail in the years to come.
Yeah, you hope so, right? You know, the Cold War had the political tones, the economic tones, and also, you know, the military buildup. This is almost spot on, exactly right, what it seemingly is. You do hope that, again, as you said, calmer heads prevail and nothing happens, or at least nothing really physically happens. But, you know, with space, it's the accidents you worry about, the mishaps of things that go wrong in a test or don't go according to plan, or, you know, Russia doesn't talk to the U.S. about something and their satellites collide or something goes wrong. So lots of potential for something to go wrong when they don't intend it to go wrong. And I think that's always the worrying issue in these areas.
The accidental whoopsie.
Yeah, the accidental whoopsie, because it's usually a big whoopsie when it's in space. There's no such thing as a small incident in space. That is not physically possible.
And what sort of range are we talking about with these missiles? How high up are they getting to?
So you know, right now most of them are targeting low to higher low Earth orbit. No one has really attempted geosynchronous orbit, because not only is geosynchronous orbit that 36,800 kilometer-ish mark where satellites stay in their same spot relative to Earth. That's, you know, that's such a small window of area that if you do ruin that, you are completely screwed. But it's also harder to get to. It doesn't mean people won't try, people won't test, but it's definitely been that low middle range. And that is the issue. That is where a lot of the space junk already is. So you're polluting an already polluted area. Not that polluting non-polluted areas are okay, but it's just, you know, adding insult to injury there.
If there is an accident that happens up there, it's not going to come raining down on Earth, but it's certainly going to cause some disruptions for satellites. What sort of satellites are at threat here in this low Earth orbit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's not like the people on Earth are going to really be harmed, but it's all that critical stuff. So there's a lot of Earth observation satellites at those heights, weather satellites, communication satellites, Starlink, for instance. So imagine, you know, we talk about Starlink quite a lot. So let's say Starlink has their full network and there's thousands of satellites up there. That's exactly the heights they are. The Hubble Space Telescope, the International Space Station, all of those are in that 300 to 400 kilometer range. Can you imagine if the space station is destroyed, right? Again, not that it will, but can you imagine the what if?
It'll be a rather large whoopsies.
Yes, exactly. So these are the sorts of things that are at risk when we talk about those heights.
Alrighty, well, our next story of the week is a little bit calmer and quite cool. The Very Large Telescope in Chile has been precisely measuring a star's orbit around a black hole here in the Milky Way, and we've proven Einstein right yet again. Yeah,
this is a really cool project because this is talk about dedication. These are observations that have been going on for 3 decades now. And that is at the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A star, the supermassive black hole that resides there. They've been tracing the motions of stars around that black hole. And as the instruments have gotten better and telescopes have gotten better, they get finer resolution. And they're able to precisely measure how the star is moving around the black hole and how that movement is influenced by the physics of the black hole, general relativity, something Einstein predicted and people have calculated solutions to. And a really cool effect, which is called essentially the precession, or the kind of the wobbling of the orbit, has been conclusively detected with one star in particular around this black hole.
And what does this prove for us?
So it's a really cool aspect of essentially orbits and Newtonian physics, Newton's laws versus Einstein's laws. What it says is that if you get closer to a source of relativity, essentially a black hole with the gravitational effects, what happens is the orbit isn't kind of a perfect constant elliptical orbit. You don't go in the same path, kind of like you think of us going around the sun. You slightly wobble around. So it's kind of like a top slightly wobbling. And so you're not going at the same spot every time. So it would be like if the Earth's orbit around the sun, which is slightly changing, eventually wobbles over time. So we're not really orbiting the same spot every time. Now, this effect was actually used on the orbit of Mercury. In fact, this was really the first tangible evidence of Einstein's laws when the orbit of Mercury, which has this precession because it's so close to the sun, was not calculated or predicted by Newton's laws, but Einstein's laws. So now this is the first time we've really seen it around another object and really around a black hole.
And when we think about the times that these people were living in, to come up with these theories, even Newton is wrong here in this instance, but to even think along these lines and to come up with these theories is just incredible. And to me, a simple podcast host, absolutely incredible and just impossible to fathom how that can just pop into their brain. You're one of these smart people, Brad. How does it happen?
Well, look, and this is what's called the Schwarzschild, orbit, which is Schwarzschild he did a lot of the work of black holes. And in Einstein's relativity, there are what we call solutions. There are ways of solving these equations in distinct instances. And one of them is the activity around black holes. Schwarzschild is called the Schwarzschild radius, what is essentially the boundary of the event horizon of a black hole, how big a black hole is. And so it's really amazing to come up with these solutions, literally in the true sense of this really obtuse equation, and have a solution to something that you don't even know if the physical thing exists, and you really have no way of thinking that it's ever going to be proven. This goes back to gravitational waves. Einstein, when he came up with this equation, said there would be ripples of gravitational waves, ripples of gravity through space. There will never be a way of proving this because it is so small, but hey, I'm still going to calculate it anyways because, maybe what if? Lo and behold, 98 years later, someone after building a telescope in LIGO was able to prove it. And in this case, after multiple telescope upgrades, someone was able to see this precise orbit that, it's mind-boggling to think that they were able to detect it.
Alrighty, Brad, well, our last story of the week, and for everyone listening to us on Tuesday, this is up on Saturday. For everyone catching the deep dive into this story on Friday, this is tomorrow. Hubble's turning 30.
Yeah, launched April 24th, 1990. It's been in orbit for 30 years, or it will be on 30 years on Saturday. And it's quite remarkable how it came to be. And it's also remarkable that it's still there and it's still kicking scientific butt. It's the gold standard of space telescopes. It's the Rocky of boxers. It's the Babe Ruth of baseball players.
The thing I love about it is that it wasn't always going to be the Rocky of space telescopes, because it had a bit of a rough start.
It had a really rough start. It took a while to get up to launch. It took the better part of 15 years from kind of start to actually launch. So this is the project that started in the 70s in terms of its build and growing. Yet when the Hubble Space Telescope was launched, there was a problem, and that is the mirror of the telescope, the main mirror, was slightly installed wrong. And we're not talking about, it's on a giant edge. How did you miss it? It's just ever so slightly, kind of like if you wear glasses and you slightly tilt your glass, where you can still see through it, but it's slightly weird, but maybe you can compensate, maybe you can deal with it. Well, in space, yeah, you can kind of deal with it, but at the precision they need, the first images were really blurry, and their giant billion-dollar space telescope was producing blurry images, and that's not a good thing.
It was a bit of a letdown in mission control, I think, when the first images came through.
That's right. Everyone's expecting, it's not going to be the best image, but wow, look at our hunky new telescope. It's like when you get any new toy out of the box and you want to plug it in and to work, and then it doesn't work. Or you don't have the computer drivers, or, oh, crap, I didn't have that cord. That was the equivalent of this, except $2 billion worth.
The brilliant thing with it, though, was that NASA had a space shuttle at the time, a rolling laboratory that they could go up and fix it, to which they did. And from then, the rest is history, as they say, and these images that have been beaming back for the better part of 3 decades have changed and shaped our understanding of the universe.
That's right. I think it is important to talk about why it was successful, and that is because of linking in with the space shuttle and being built to be serviced by the space shuttle. The Hubble Space Telescope had 4 service missions, as it's called. So 4 different missions where astronauts went. So the first one was really fixing the lens, fixing the mirror, but they added new batteries, they topped up the fuel, they put in new cameras and instruments, they kept it going. So, the Hubble Space Telescope as of today is actually quite different from the Hubble Space Telescope in 1990. So they kept those upgrades, they kept those things that we do to things on time, all the time on Earth. We upgrade our phones or computers, we upgrade telescopes. But here they're able to upgrade it and keep it going, and it's been producing new science, So in the first rounds, they would discover things, and then they build new cameras to follow up and build on those discoveries. And that's what is the great thing about it. A way of quantifying this is when you apply to a telescope, you apply for time. So you have this idea, you write a proposal, it goes to an independent body where all of the proposals are assessed, and this group says, all right, well, these are the best ones, and so they weight best ideas versus how much time. You might have a very good idea, but if you want all of the Hubble Space Telescope for 3 years to yourself, you're probably not going to get it. And so what we call is, how in demand it is. Now, most telescopes on the ground, the smaller ones, you get about 2 to 3 times as many proposals there is time. So you only get a half or a third of the people are successful. The bigger ones are 4 to 5. Hubble is usually anywhere between 15 and 20 times the allowed time. That's how in demand it is. It is just indescribable for a 30-year-old telescope. Which
means that there would be a wait list a mile long, and you would hope that it's going to keep on serving for everyone's missions.
People keep proposing and keep getting ideas, and you don't get it this year, so you try again, and then you get new ideas. The list actually just builds. It just increases. It's like your home DIY to-do list. You think you do one thing, but you realize, oh, well, the list is growing, not shrinking here. And that's right. We hope the Hubble Space Telescopes can keep going on. There's no more service missions planned. The last one, which was one of the last space shuttle missions, was it. So it hasn't been serviced in 10 years, and it's still going strong. And it will kind of be run into the ground, so to speak. They'll do as much as they can until it can't observe anymore. And so you do hope that it will last. And the exciting thing now, and we've talked about this, is that the new replacement Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, even though it's delayed, because Hubble keeps going on, we may have both at one time. And that is a really exciting option that people are thinking about now, having two really cool, awesome space telescopes at the same time. We never thought that was going to happen.
So, what is the future for Hubble? It's going to be used until it can't be used anymore. Then what happens to it? Does it sit up there and become a monument to all of this research and study that it helped carry out?
Yeah, so, this is a great question, because at this point it will be. It is in low Earth orbit, so that means that eventually it will re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, but is a really, archaeologically important piece. There's Alice Gorman, who's a researcher in South Australia, does space archaeology, because there is an aspect of human history and evolution and culture in our space. And Hubble's one of them. You just don't want it to burn up into a sad piece of space junk. So either you somehow prop it up so it stays up there for thousands of years, because you could slightly use the last fuel to move it into a higher orbit so it stays there for longer, or eventually it will come back down and burn up in the Earth's atmosphere, which is a very sad ending to something that's so important.
Well, there is the MEV mission, the Mission Extender Vehicle. We
Yes.
could just attach one of those to it and chuck it into lunar orbit.
That's right. That's right. And that's the thing, is there's so much time not to fix it or repair it or extend its life, but to keep it as an object, a historical object, that there will be options in the future. So I think everyone's realizing, with the evolution of how things are going in space, there will probably be an option, a way of preserving it to some degree, which is that defining moment and that hopeful moment, because it is a good piece. Maybe in 20 years, someone will be able to actually attach it and safely bring it back down to Earth, and we can keep it as a piece of, in the Smithsonian Museum or something like that.
Now, that would be very cool. Hubble next to the Starship Enterprise.
Yeah, why not? And the Apollo 11 capsule, those three things.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. So you probably could do that in 20 years, and it will definitely be up there for decades. That it's not going to come down anytime soon.
Fantastic, Brad. It is fun to pick apart the stories of the week with you each and every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. We can find you on social media, Twitter at btucker22 and Dr. Brad Tucker on Facebook. You've got those educational live streams continuing, doing some really great job and teaching the kids some great astronomy there as well. And people can find those on your Facebook page and your socials. And of course, you can find Trekzone across social media. Just search for Trekzone. You can find me on Twitter at Miramat86.
Yeah, we'll keep doing them. Next week will be all about black holes. So if you really want to know black holes, we're going to dive into it, but not in the horrible spaghettification dying way.
Fantastic, Brad. We'll chat to you next week.
See ya.
Well, that's how we do Trekzone Live, Talkin' Science, uncut editions every Saturday. And don't forget, those super chats are open and they support Trekzone 100%. They go towards the maintenance of running the website and the podcast, which I'm doing all by myself, which I'm more than happy to do, but if you guys are willing to help me out as well to continue making great content and make even greater content, then that is super appreciated as well. The super chats on the YouTube live stream, the PayPal link as well, paypal.me/spiralmedia. Everything goes directly to me, minus the PayPal fees and the YouTube fees, but 100% to me, 100% to the bills, which means I can spend money on making things even better. And hopefully you're enjoying what we're doing. Well, stick around, because on Monday we're going to be chatting with Sidewalk Furniture's Riley Doherty. She's the vocalist there in that band, and it is absolutely incredible what they're doing. They're an angry nerd punk and rock band. Very cool. They've got a new album out. They've got a special for Trekzone viewers and listeners as well. So be on the lookout for that one on Monday. Dr. Brad Tucker's back for another Talkin' Science on Tuesday. We'll have our deep dives into the stories of the week on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. Next Saturday, back again with another live stream. It's been real fun to get back into this live streaming as well. Bit hectic, bit frantic. It is our return after 9 months, though. So stick around. We're going to be doing more of this. This is a Trekzone Conversation. I'm Matt Miller. She's asleep. That's Ahsoka. And she's our mascot. Gotta love that beagle. Alrighty, we're out of here. This has been Trekzone Live for this Saturday, April 25, 2020.